Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. On today's episode of the show, we're going to be talking about the latest film and TV news. My name is Ben Pearson. I'm the senior writer at slashfilm.com, and I'm joined on today's episode by Slash Film staff writer Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hey, everyone.
Hi, HT. How are you?
I'm good.
That's great. Okay, so let's dive directly into the news here. And there's some Marvel casting news that we should talk about. So give me the scoop on what's going on in the world of the MCU.
Yeah, Marvel's Secret Invasion series at Disney Plus is starting to get a pretty stacked cast. Samuel L. Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn were already reported to be reprising their roles from Captain Marvel and all the other Marvel movies in Secret Invasion, which would sort of adapt the massive crossover event in which a slow invasion of Earth takes place from the shape-shifting Skrulls, one of which Ben Mendelsohn plays, but of course that's going to have some sort of change added to it since the Skrulls were shown to be mostly benign aliens. But we had recently reported that Kingsley Ben-Adir from One Night in Miami was set to join the cast as the main villain, and now we have two more really, you know, talented cast members joining, and that is Olivia Coleman, who won an Oscar for her role in The Favorite and is nominated for an Oscar again for her performance in The Father, and Emilia Clarke, best known for Game of Thrones fame. So neither of these two have a role attached to them yet. There's no information on who or what they're playing, but this is a pretty stacked cast so far.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I'm not super excited about the idea of Secret Invasion because I've never read that comic, and I understand that the comic book is like way more expansive in scope because there are characters like the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, and it's like this huge, massive crossover kind of event. And this show is going to be much more pared down than the comic books, but just the idea of the scrolls and invasions and ways for the MCU to sort of like retcon itself and like fold back in on itself. I kind of feel like they run the danger of getting like a little bit too meta for their own good. But what do you think, HT? Talk me out of that, or are you on the same page? Where are you on this?
What do you mean by too meta exactly?
Well, the idea like Avengers Endgame, I feel like worked really well in terms of the time travel aspect and being able to physically go back into the events of previous movies and like do a little bit of like
Fix it.
yeah, a little bit of a fix it kind of thing for Thor: The Dark World, for example. Like the events that happen in Endgame give that movie a little bit more weight than it would have had otherwise. And I feel like Secret Invasion, if they keep the same basic concept, which is there are invasions from, or there is an invasion from a shape-shifting group of characters, they could very easily go back through, some of the MCU events in a similar way and like pinpoint moments that they don't like or want to tweak in some way and just be like, it was a scroll. So, that sort of like that excuses us for these storytelling whiffs that we made, in years past.
I see
Do you
what
know
you
what I
mean.
mean?
Kind of like retconning in a way that makes it
Yeah.
convenient for the larger picture and not some bad like creative storytelling choice or something like that.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the worst case scenario as I'm imagining it. But do you think, because like you said, the scrolls, as they appeared in Captain Marvel, are not these sort of like all encompassing like evil villains that they are in the pages of Marvel comics. So but I don't know what I guess aside from this casting stuff, which I agree is very exciting. I love all these people, and I'm excited that these talented actors are being pulled into this story. What do you think about the Secret Invasion? The concept of that show in this world where the scrolls have been established as not all bad.
Well, I didn't assume it would be looking back as much as looking forward, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't really think of it as being like a chance to retcon a bunch of things and like take the rug from under your feet by saying, "Oh, this person was a scroll the entire time. That explains why they were such a bad character," or something like that. I assumed it would be something more like moving forward, that instead of going back into previous movies, which I don't think they would do, because this is part of, the new phase of Marvel, so to speak. And I think it would build upon past events versus try to change them retroactively.
That's a good point. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, and I hope you're right. I hope the idea of this being, kind of a fresh start after Endgame means that this invasion will not have happened already, but will either be just starting or be in the process or something, instead of, oh, these scrolls have been around for, 100 years or however
Yeah.
long already, that's at this point. So, um, any particular thoughts about Coleman or Clark here? I mean, I know we don't know who they're going to be playing, but I think you in your piece writing up the news about Olivia Coleman, you sort of like made a plea to Marvel for something that you hope that they don't do, right?
Yeah, I hope they don't hide her under layers of prosthetics. That's the my one big hope, because she's such an emotive actress, and I'm really happy that she has gotten like the second wind in her career, where she's had sort of a dramatic breakthrough after impressing so long in comedy and in TV. And I just want to see her, be able to act to her utmost without all those prosthetics. Though I do think that she is one of the few actors who could pull off like making a likable character out of a scroll, like prosthetic based
Mhm.
character, because like Ben Mendelsohn did with his character, and he's such a great and likable actor, and he was a scene stealer in Captain Marvel, and I feel like Olivia Coleman could do the same. But there's actually fun Doctor Who crossover. She was in an episode of Doctor Who before she, pre-Oscar fame, and she was just a good, solid character actor, and she showed up as the villain of the episode, but was kind of a forgettable villain. It was kind of a they didn't make as much use of her as they could have. So
Mhm.
that's my one hope. Like they don't Doctor Who her and just kind of like give her a fine villain, but nothing that actually like you works to her talents.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the sequel for this movie, which we still don't know what the title is. We know it's going to be coming out in 2022. This movie now has three directors. So way back in 2018, I think right before the first movie actually was released, there was some news that I think his name is Joaquim Dos Santos, who's one of the directors of Avatar: The Last Airbender, would be directing this upcoming sequel. But a couple days ago, or actually, I guess this was last night, Variety reported that Kemp Powers, who is one of the co-directors of Pixar's Soul and the writer of One Night in Miami, and Justin K. Thompson, who is the production designer on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, have joined Dos Santos, and they have now formed this sort of triumvirate of directors for this new movie. So that's exciting news. According to Variety's report, these three have actually been working on the project together from the start. So this is something that I guess could have, maybe should have come out, way back in 2018. I'm not sure why it took so long for this bit of news to sort of trickle out into the world, especially if these guys have been working on this together the whole time. But Justin K. Thompson, this is going to be the first time that he's directing anything. He also was the production designer of the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs movies that Lord and Miller did. And so I'm excited to see sort of what he brings, behind the camera. He was such an integral part of like the crafting the aesthetic and the look of the first Spider-Verse movie. And then Kemp Powers obviously had like a hell of a year last year. I mean, COVID aside, he was like, 2020 was like a great year for Kemp Powers because of Soul and One Night in Miami. So, and the idea that these guys have been working on this since 2018 means that the people who, at Sony, the producers of this movie, were able to sort of pick Kemp Powers out of like relative obscurity earlier than, they got him like way early they're not just like jumping on the Kemp Powers bandwagon here. They got him like well before his sort of breakout year last year. The only other news that came with this announcement was that Lord and Miller I think Phil Lord had a writing credit on the first movie, and Miller was a producer, and they both produced the first movie. They are actually officially co-writing the script for the sequel with Dave Callahan, who wrote the script for Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings, which is another Marvel movie. So all of that is exciting to me, and I think all of us on the podcast really loved Into the Spider-Verse, so we're excited to see what happens with that sequel. It's not going to be out for a while, though. October 7th, 2022 is when that comes out, but I just wanted to drop that directing news in case people needed more reasons to get excited about that movie. HT, I don't know much about Joaquim Dos Santos, but his credits, in the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender, I think he also directed several episodes of Legend of Korra. Do you know anything about him? Is he a person whose name has stuck out to you in the credits when you were sort of consuming all of those shows?
Yeah, I recognize his name. He was a background designer and character designer on Avatar: The Last Airbender. I don't know what episode of Avatar he directed. I can't remember exactly, but any person who's associated with Avatar: The Last Airbender is fine by my book.
Great. Okay, so let's get into some news about the Batman spinoff series that's coming to HBO Max. What do we know about that?
Yes, according to well, this is kind of through the grapevine. So, um, the Batman spinoff series has been purported to be about Gotham PD for a while now, and it was always kind of assumed that it would be an adaptation of the acclaimed comic series Gotham Central. Although there would be major differences because the HBO Max series will be a prequel to Matt Reeves' feature film The Batman, and Gotham Central takes place concurrently with the events of Batman, like as he's well into his career. So there would be some differences there, but Gotham Central, the comic series, was written by Ed Brubaker and Greg Rucka, and Brubaker was also curious of whether Gotham Central would play a large part in the HBO Max. Batman spinoff, which doesn't have a title yet. And Brubaker had apparently approached a producer who works for Matt Reeves and asked, "Are they going to make it about Gotham Central? Or am I going to have to think about like whether the rights to the title is going to be in play here?" And this producer apparently told him, "No, it's not really Gotham Central. They're making sure that they don't call it Gotham Central. It's more of a spinoff of the movie, and it will actually be more like the James Gordon show. James Gordon being Commissioner Gordon, played by Jeffrey Wright in." The Matt Reeves Batman. And so this seems to be an indication that this will be another prequel series dedicated to James Gordon. And I say another because that's exactly what the concept of the Fox TV series Gotham was before it went off the rails and became like this big rogues gallery showcase.
Mhm.
And that show also took inspiration from Gotham Central, but didn't like strictly adapt it. So
Mhm.
it's kind of it feels like it's retreading some old territory, but at the same time, we don't know when this prequel will be taking place, how long ago it'll be taking place as a prequel. Will Jeffrey Wright be reprising his role, or will a younger actor be playing a young Jeffrey Wright in this
Oh,
series?
that's interesting. I just assumed it would be Jeffrey Wright, but yeah, that's a good point. I guess I could have a totally different person play a much younger version of that character.
Yeah, because Jeffrey Wright is not confirmed to appear in this series as of yet, so it's still up in the air. It's supposed to be about the corruption in Gotham City police before the vigilante appears, and it's going to be show run by Joe Barton, who took to Twitter last month to tease the tone of the show, tweeting that there are no good cops. So it's about police corruption and all that stuff. So yeah. Um, I don't know whether it will be more of a success than Gotham. I remember checking out the pilot episode of Gotham, and I really disliked it, despite liking the star a lot, whose name is slipping me, the OC star. But yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do with this now that feels like it's kind of retreading old ground.
Yeah, I guess it's just retreading, but with the sort of like prestige sheen on it, right? Like
Hmm.
it's kind of the same. So many of these comic book stories are just like told and retold over and over again, so it's not like super surprising. But and I guess the fact that this is going to be on HBO Max and like with you had Terrence Winter, who like was a big I guess creative force behind this, who has since stepped away, but it has that sort of like prestige TV kind of vibe to it. And especially if they actually get Jeffrey Wright to reprise that role, it will feel like more of a big deal, I think.
Hmm.
Um, what do you think about this, HG? Like the idea of this being, the James Gordon show. I know you're a fan of Batman, especially like the Bat family. You've expressed
I
your love
am.
for those characters before. What do you think about the character of Jim Gordon? Where does he fit into the Bat family that you love so much? Is he sort of like in the comics that you've read and the movies and TV shows that you've consumed and are a particular fan of, is he sort of like a like a beloved uncle who's like, I guess if you were to give him a distinction within that family?
I mean, he's still mostly a peripheral character to the Bat family, apart from his connection, of course, to Barbara Gordon. And I think that his sort of resigned and wary alliance with Batman is always an interesting thing. But he's not one of my favorite characters per se. But and I can't say that I'm that interested in a Jim Gordon show, especially after being underwhelmed by the Fox version. But you're right. It is a prestige take on it. Maybe it'll be something interesting and new. I admittedly was more interested in seeing an adaptation of Gotham Central, because that feels like it's more of a diverse group of characters and you can have a fun ensemble with that. But yeah, I don't know if we already have enough sort of brooding, righteous characters in
Mhm.
Gotham with Batman. So I don't know how much of a difference you can have with a Gordon one. So yeah, I can't say I'm super excited about this. I also have not seen Jeffrey Wright in the role yet, apart from a couple of scenes in a trailer. So maybe I'll be really won over by his performance and want to see either him reprise his role or a younger version of him again.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of Batman, let's talk a little bit about Zack Snyder, who directed Ben Affleck as Batman in a couple movies over the past few years. There's some news going around yesterday. During an interview at something called Justice Con this past weekend, Zack Snyder and Chris Terrio, who were the writers, or Snyder directed, and Terrio was the writer of Justice League, and I believe Terrio did writing a pass of the script for Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice. They were talking a little bit about the title for that film, the one that came out in 2016. And over the past few, I guess, weeks, Chris Terrio has come out. There was a big article he did in Vanity Fair, or interview he did for Vanity Fair, where he was talking about how he was not a fan of that title, and he absolutely would not have named the movie that, and he thinks that it was the studio and suspected it was like marketing, and that was the only reason that it got that title, because he did not like it. His quote here was, the intention of the film was to do something interesting and dark and complex, not quite as Las Vegas bust 'em up WWE match as Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. So during this interview at JusticeCon this past weekend, Snyder and Terrio, I guess, were asked about the title, and they confirmed that Warner Brothers indeed were the ones who chose the title for that movie, and they wanted something a little bit different. So Zack Snyder said, "I remember when there was a back and forth that I had with the studio. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice was like the only title that they liked. The whole V instead of versus, it was like this crazy negotiation. I was like, guys, can't we just do something like Son of Sun and Night of Night, or something that's a little bit more poetic?" And they were like, absolutely not. I was like, is it a court case? So yeah, that's the whole court case thing. A lot of people were making that joke when the V instead of versus came out. But this idea of that Zack Snyder seemingly legitimately wanting this movie to be called Son of Sun, SON of SUN, and Night of Night, KNIGHT of NIGHT, as a an allusion to Batman versus or Batman and Superman is kind of insane. So actually, I just wanted to get your read on that.
Homonyms.
Yes, I mean, this is like, it's so out there that to even dunk on it feels superfluous. Like it's not even necessary. Like, it's so crazy that he just thought that this would be something that a major studio would release, a huge, whatever, $200 million movie with a title like that. It's kind of wild. Chris Terrio mentioned that there was discussions at one point about using titles like Justice League Foundations or Justice League Rising to suggest that this movie would be part of that sort of larger arc of movies that Zack Snyder had been envisioning. Obviously, they did not go with those. I think those are a little bit better, a little bit more comprehensible than Son of Sun and Night of Night.
Why not just go with World's Finest? That's
Yes,
it's the
exactly.
it's the informal title for the Justice League and Batman and Superman anyways. I don't understand. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to get too mean about it, but the
Yeah, we
idea
don't.
the idea of using
I,
these homonyms as and thinking like it just reeks of someone thinking that they are much more poetic and learned than like it's kind of it. Yeah, I'm not gonna go into it actually. I don't want to
Yeah,
invite any
it's. I know. Like I hesitate
multiple
to even bring this
pretentious.
up because like I don't want everybody to be like, oh, this is the podcast where people just like dunk on Zack Snyder the whole time. Like I'm legitimately looking forward to Army of the Dead, which is his new Netflix movie. The trailer for that came out recently, and I'm like, oh man, this looks like a lot of fun. So I'm not like a Zack Snyder hater. uh, we did a whole in-depth spoiler interview or review of the Snyder Cut, and there were several things in that movie that I actually enjoyed. So it's not, I'm not bringing this up just to dunk on Zack Snyder, but just man, this like the disconnect between reality and what is actually possible and what he wanted here is just so wild. I think okay, so to put a point on this, I think Brad Oman in our Slack channel actually had the most charitable reading of this entire situation here, and he said that Son of Sun and Night of Night sounds like it would be a really good title for a comic book, but not a
Yes.
good title for an actual movie, especially one that had to shoulder so much.
It would be a great
As,
title for a TV episode even. Like that's a
oh
cool
yeah,
title. But yeah, it's just not something for a big tentpole movie release.
yeah. Last time I checked last night, the so Slash Film tweets out all of the articles that we post through the at Slash Film Twitter account, and I just happened to be scrolling through Twitter last night, and I saw that several people were retweeting this, just like making jokes about the idea of Son of Sun and Night of Night. And last I saw it, I think it had like 870 quote tweets, and I was like, man, that is a lot of jokes. People really were tapping into that and disagreeing harshly with what Zack Snyder, I guess, his poetic version of this title. So I just thought it was interesting, and maybe a window into the psyche of Zack Snyder, a guy who we're always looking to learn a little bit more about and try to get inside his head and figure out why he makes the decisions that he
Yeah,
does. So
honestly, he seems like a decent guy. He seems like a
he
nice
does.
guy. He also feels like a philosophy 101 guy that I wouldn't
Yeah.
really want to talk to, but also he seems perfectly nice.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, I think that's going to bring us to the end of today's episode of Slash Film Daily. You can find more about all of these stories that we mentioned on today's show at slashfilm.com and linked inside the show notes of this episode. Slash Film Daily is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features you can find on the site. You can subscribe to the show on Apple, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all of the popular podcast apps, and send your feedback, questions, comments, and concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Make sure to leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention your email on the air. Don't forget to send in mailbag topics and recommendations and questions to us there too. Also, don't forget to rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts. We've gotten some really great reviews recently, so thank you all for anybody who's done that. And I encourage all of you who are listening, if you haven't done that yet, to please just take a few minutes and do that. It would be really, really helpful. Tell your friends, spread the word. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you tomorrow.